Hey, this is Otodojo, and I'm going to show you my process of my live set that I portrayed in the month of March of 2023 at the Bunker at Good Room, Perfect Party Lookbook at Bossa Nova Civic Club, and Microtones at Forest City Lodge 180. I'm going to just show the key components that I felt were interesting of the live set, and some ways that I organized it to make it fun for myself, as well as make it an interesting sonic experience. So some qualities that I desired while making this set were to think more about the general direction and less time sequencing. And to do that, I needed some automated drums with just a small semblance of control, as well as an ability to mix between instruments that I've already made from tracks and be able to control all their parameters. So this would have to be MIDI based. And I also wanted to have some flexibility to add drums on top if I wanted to give an accent to a particular moment. So hopefully some of these explanations offer some inspiration for your own development of your live set. And if you have any questions at the end of it, please leave them in the comments, or you can send me a DM on Instagram or by email at otodojo@gmail.com. Okay, I hope you enjoy it. So for the drums of the set, I opted to use Smacko's 808 simulator from Lego Welt, as well as the 909 Amiga. And to sequence it, I'm using Alex Kidd's Instant House that I edited and have 2 instances of. Each channel of Instant House has a certain number of patterns that will play according to whatever note that you give it, and you can have different swing settings and velocity settings. So I modified some of these patterns, and I mapped individual kicks that have chokes according to the primary kicks into the supplementary Instant House, which allows for some interesting kick variations. So this is more, if we change the break settings, this is more sparse kicks that will then map or choke the primary kicks in an interesting way. And I can add hats and various other percussion. That are all mapped to these knobs. And I'm using a random MIDI operation here, which adds some variation that I can disable, and a note echo for fills. So once I increase this fixed delay, then this will start playing notes up and down the drum rack. And I can turn it off and just go back to the regular pattern. It offers a lot of flexibility. And I mapped the pitch of some of the kicks to this knob. As well as I added in some other kick drums that I can scrub through by clicking this button. So if we look into that instrument rack, we can find what's going on. So over here, every time I click this button, we are selecting a different variation in the macros, and the macros variations are just indicating to the chain selector what kick we're using here. And with this, there's a lot of flexibility. The only rate limiting step is actually going into the Max for Live device and editing the patterns. So if someone has an alternative method or has perhaps created a mod of this where the patterns are freely editable, that'd be amazing. For the supplementary drums, I'm using 2 instrument racks that are filled with operators, and each operator has some different settings. If you look over here, where they are repeating at different intervals. And the clips that I'm playing are continuously looping clips, where if you format the clip like this, with the start flag in the beginning and looping in the mid region of the MIDI note, you'll be able to loop continuously. And if I increase the volume here, you can hear these kind of straightforward hats from this one, where again, if I click this button, it slides through the different macro variations. So I can easily get simple hats and then modify the parameters on the fly. But these macros offer good starting points to get the kind of textures that I want. So if I then move this fader, I can go through the different chain parameters. And sometimes it's a little finicky. This one's inspired by Mike Parker. And similarly with the other operator, this one's slightly more complex. I have much more variations for this one that I labeled, and sometimes you have to re-trigger the clip, so I mapped the fader to the clip trigger over here. So you can take the macro variations of one chain and then apply them to another to hear how they sound. And the parameters within the macros are mapped to things like LFO rate, frequency, resonance, time, tone, and some patterns for repeating. So combining this with drums is pretty fun. And you can slowly morph between different operators. My Xone K1 controls volume and parameters within a swath of instruments in these 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I open up this first group, you can see all the individual columns or tracks here that have different instruments within them that I've made over time through my tracks and digested them into a simple format. And I map parameters. All the faders are volume only, and each one of these controls different parameters within the tracks. So this one is usually frequency, this is resonance of a filter, and this is kind of like a wild card depending on what the synthesizer is. So if I just close this group and play the first row, this will play the first instrument clip. And then if I play the second row, this will play the second instrument and stop the first instrument, which will reduce CPU overload. And just kind of going down, you can hear. And I can control different parameters. Of course, mixing and matching these, all of the similarly colored rows or columns or clips are associated with the same track. So the first one is Amphibious Spirits, which all go together. So this allows me to mix and match between different tracks that I make. And I think this is the aspect of the live set that took me the longest to figure out, because it is a fairly simple once you start to think about it, but it took me a while to kind of get to this conclusion. And I think this is probably the most useful tidbit of information that I'm going to give you today. So now here is all of that together. this instrument is using Iftigaba's microtuner, which I have divided into 11 pitches through the generator, and I found that this is actually a pretty close approximation to the Kalundi scale. Although I can't completely back that up, it just sounds similar to me. Another part of my set is using Workbench by Carl Scholes. It is a sequencer sampler for the iOS that allows you to load samples, control their envelopes, control their pitch, filter them, and add effects like echo and reverb. And you can easily switch the region that you're sampling or the region that you're sequencing and quickly get interesting fills. The 303 in my set is from this TB03 on lend from my friend Indy Niles, and it is sequenced through Sting by Iftagaba, where every time you click the smiley it resets the pattern. You're able to control the pattern type, density, length, and I chained some note echoes to create some interesting fills. So the final aspect of my live set is just using this jaw harp, and I would record the jaw harp and elongate the sample length. After recording, I would elongate the sample by clicking the ×2 button and switching the mode to texture mode and increasing the grain size all the way, and that would give me the texture that I get in the live set. So this concludes the explanation of this live set from March 2023, and I just want to say thank you to all the promoters who put their trust in me, The Bunker New York, Perfect Party Lookbook, Microtones Collective, and thank you to ACE for making this AR artwork for the release of Amphibious and Aural Spirits. That was released on the Bunker New York Bandcamp back in March. And this album was listed as one of Mixmag's favorite albums of the year. So thank you for that, Mixmag. If you haven't checked out the live set yet, it is available on the Bunker's SoundCloud. And I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions or if you want to reach out to me regarding tutoring for Ableton, hit my line at otodojo@gmail.com. Thank you.